Hey folks, welcome into my home, welcome into my office. This video is to help you get ready for your next discussion online, which you will be doing on Thursday. But before we get started, I'd like to show you my office because it plays a little bit of a role in what I'm going to talk about here in just a few minutes. And I want to start with these folks who are up on the wall. So just for a minute, I'll introduce you to them. So here's my office. That's the table I work at whenever I'm writing. And I spend most of my time, though, in this very nice chair. I do a lot of my writing there as well as reading, and also when I am working on your all's papers. Up here, though, my ancestors. We'll start with these two folks. This is Martina and Papa Polo, and those were my great-grandparents. They both raised my mother because my grandmother, Romilia, went off to work at a young age in order to make more money for the family and left her daughter, my mother, with her parents. Now this is my grandfather, and his name was Pilar Reyes, and at age 27, soon after this photo was taken, he was shot and murdered in El Salvador when my mother was 2 years old. And here is my mother on her wedding day. Isn't she lovely? And while we're at it, I'll show you a little bit more. This is one of my two favorite authors, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who wrote 100 Years of Solitude. And I'm thinking about putting over here, although this is a painting by my wife, I don't know if I want to replace it, but I've been thinking about putting my other favorite novelist up here, A Portrait of Toni Morrison. Oh, there's one other person I meant to show to you. This was my wife when we first met in 1982. Yep, that's my girl. That's mi vida. All of these people and more of my ancestors, to me, play a fundamental role in my life still today. And I think that's a good segue into talking about Milkman. Now you remember that Milkman and his dad are looking for gold, and they thought it was in that bag that Pilot has hanging in her house. But all they find when they steal it, Milkman and Guitar steal it, the only thing they find are rocks and human bones. So that was a disappointment for them. Now there's one point in this section where Lena, she really comes down on his ass like a hurricane. She gets on about how spoiled he is. She compares him to their father Macon, who only thinks about money and wealth. And she says, quote, to Milkman, "You are a sad, pitiful, stupid, selfish, hateful man." And this, I believe, is where Milkman's journey truly begins. A journey into the self. And this is an old mythological theme that we will find in this section where Milkman goes looking for the gold. And so he thinks, or they all think, that it's still in the cave where Macon and Pilot had once been way back in the past, where they had hid after their father had been murdered. So he's going to go look for this cave. So he flies to Danville, and he loves the flight. If you got to that point, he loves flying. So there's a little thing about flight going on again. And he flies to Pittsburgh, and then he gets to Danville. And when he gets to Danville, he starts asking around. Now, he's shown up in a three-piece suit, wingtip shoes. He looks like a real dandy, and a cityfied boy if there ever was one. And those folks in Danville spot him out just so quick. They know that he's definitely not from there. But then they find out who he is. He is of the Dead family. He is Macon Dead's son. And when they find that out, they're like, "Oh my God, you're Macon Dead's son." And they talk about Macon Dead in a way that Milkman has never heard before. And we haven't heard either as the readers. They talk about how the get up and go he had and how much he was going to do well in his life. And when they ask Milkman how well he did, and he talks about all of the wealth that Macon has gathered, they say, yeah, do you see? That's the way. That's Macon, all right. That's Macon. And they start to talk about Milkman's ancestors. And for a moment, Milkman forgets about the gold, because he gets sucked up into this reminiscing about who his father was, who his people were, and that's a very important word. They keep saying, I know your people. I know your people. We know who your people are. Oh, your people. And that's something Milkman, I don't believe, is considered much. Because all he thinks about is himself, his individuality, and he really doesn't care about other folks around him. And all he wants, like his dad, is gold, so he can be free, so he can be independent. But now he's getting pulled into this world of community, of ancestry, and it's starting to get into him. Now, while he's there, he learns about the woman named, I'm going to say Circe, C-I-R-C-E. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but Circe is a character out of Homer's Odyssey, and she's the one who takes Ulysses, the main character of the Odyssey, back home. The Odyssey is all about the journey back home. Ah, okay. See? Toni Morrison, she's doing it. She's using names in order to evoke the role that the characters play in the novel. And Circe, or Circe, Circe sounds like turkey, and that's really not good. He meets Circe, and she tells him a lot more of the story about the family. She talks about how old man Macon, the grandfather, was murdered, shot off the fence, and how the Butler family got away with it, the white family who had killed him. And she's the one who points out when he asks about the cave. She says, they dumped old Macon's body in the cave. And that's when Milkman's ears perk up and says, oh, the cave. Yeah, I'd like to go find the bones in order to bury them properly. He's looking for the gold. So she sends him and says, okay, the cave is over there. You this way, that way, this way, and you go over there. Well, it's far enough away. And this journey is the journey into the self. This is where the journey into the self can get a little scary. Milkman is walking through the woods. He's getting his three-piece suit is getting all torn apart. His shoes split open. At one point he falls and almost drowns himself. His watch breaks, which is very interesting. Watch breaking out in the woods. We're in the woodland now. We're way out into the forest where there really is no concept of time. Time is a concept by humans, made up by human beings. It doesn't really exist. And in the woods it doesn't exist either. Milkman is being lost in a timeless moment. And he keeps on going and he keeps on going. So he's journeying. He's getting all ripped up, all torn apart. And he gets to the cave. And of course, what does he find? Nothing. And this point, though, he's in a cave. Now, these are old myths. These are terrific myths. The one about Ulysses trying to get back home. But the myth of going deep into the cave, going into the ground, I think those of you who are studying psychology can see very quickly that that is like going deep into the brain, going into the self. And for the moment, he doesn't find what he thinks he's looking for. And so he leaves. But the journey is not over with, though, because he's going to meet these guys back in Danville who are going to just beat the shit out of him. I mean, not in the way that you like beating him up, but they're going to take him through the ringer, and it's going to be another part of this journey. Now, I keep talking about myth and journey because and this is where I'm going to go and invite you into the discussion here. These folks behind me are in my blood, and how this is very difficult to articulate sometimes. But I was a lost soul as a younger man, in the sense of I was not connected to my roots. I had been taken away from my roots young. I lived in San Francisco in a Salvadoran community for my first years of life, and then was wrenched out of that world and taken to another world, the Appalachian world of my father. So ever since I was a teenager, I sought out my Salvadoran roots. And let me tell you, the journey isn't just, let me get to know what it means to be Salvadoran. But to really take the journey, what I did was to find myself and to reclaim my Spanish, which had gotten real dorky through the years. I moved away from here. I got away from here and moved to Central America and stayed there for a number of years. And I got beaten up. I was a guy with the three-piece suit and the wingtip shoes and I was traveling through a third world country, my mother's country, home country of El Salvador. And metaphorically, my three-piece suit was getting all torn apart. I was being bashed with, the real Spanish from El Salvador and trying to keep up with it. People would make fun of me for being a gringo guanaco or a gringo Salvadoran, but in good-natured ways. Not always, though. Some people also came down on me for being a gringo from the United States, a country that has done a lot of bad in Central America, specifically El Salvador. I got beat up, and that was part of the journey. I had to go through some thick woods to try to get to my cave. And this is where you come in. Here's what the discussion will open on Thursday, and it'll be from noon to midnight, just like the last one. And the question I want you to think about is, what is your relationship with your own roots? We're all over the place. Each one of us has our own connection to our roots. Some of us might feel really close to what those roots are. Some may feel like we've been wrenched away from them, like I said about my own life. And some may be trying to go back to that. We're all over the place, and that's cool. Some of us, in the Latinx world, we've talked about this before in class too, the question of how much Spanish can one speak? How fluent one is? Does that determine how Latinx you are? What does it mean to be Mexican American, Salvadoran American? What does it mean to be Asian American? What does it mean to be Italian American? What does it mean? What are our roots? And with that also is, have you taken a journey toward your roots? I think we're always asking questions about ourselves. And so I want you to take the question, and I'll have it on the discussion, I'll have it laid out a little bit more explicitly, to take the discussion to what does it mean, what do your roots mean to you? What are those roots? How close are you to them? And this will be an open discussion, and you can talk about your own roots, you can compare perhaps your own life with Milkman's life, as I've done a little bit here as well. And just really consider that, to take some time to find out who you are from the people who came before you. Then on Thursday, we will do the discussion online. Meanwhile, keep up your reading. I hope in the midst of all this craziness that things are going well. We're getting close to Thanksgiving. We're getting close to the end of the semester. But hang in there, especially because our college has suffered something really horrible. And I've been thinking about you all every day. I was worried there for a while, and I still just hope. I'm hoping the best for you during this time. And I'm hoping for even, yes, happiness for you during this time.